And I call the meeting to order. Rebecca, will you please call the roll?
Ham.
Here.
Esty.
Yes.
Gandy.
Yes.
Kness.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Great. Council, are there any changes to this agenda? Not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the November 12th, 2024 council meeting. Approval of November 22nd, 2024 payroll in the amount of $148,968.12. Approval of the annual finance report. Approval of the street finance report. Approval of tax increment financing certifications. Acceptance of the Volunteer Center Committee minutes. Acceptance of the Beautification Commission minutes. Acceptance of the Library Board minutes. And acceptance of the Property Committee minutes from 11/1 and 11/8/24. Resolution of tobacco permit holder. Resolution of employment in the Wastewater Department. Consent of Chamber of Commerce street closure request. Approval of ACH payment to the Department of Revenue in the amount of $37,262.65. Approval of total claims in the amount of $428,772.47. We did have two claims that were more than $75,000. One to Boomerang Corporation for Step 3 in the amount of $143,703.77, and one to EBS for $80,326.09. That's for insurance premiums.
I did review claims and everything looks in order.
Great, thank you, Terry.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Okay, moved by Gandy.
Second.
Second by Ham. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Gandy.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Kness.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
So we have two public appearances tonight. First up is our library director, Alecs Mickunas, and he's going to talk about the Sustainable Libraries Initiative.
Wow, that was like the shortest first segment I've ever seen. Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to share an exciting initiative that could enhance our library's role in serving our community, the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. This program empowers libraries to adopt sustainable practices that mitigate climate change, promote economic and social equity, and model environmental stewardship. The SLI was founded in 2018 and is driven by the vision of leaders like Dr. Rebecca Aldrich, a passionate advocate for libraries as change makers in sustainable development. The initiative offers a certification program that helps libraries evaluate and improve their practices across three key areas: environmental sustainability, social equity, and fiscal responsibility. Achieving certification allows libraries to demonstrate leadership in addressing local and global challenges while improving their operations and community impact. Fairfield Public Library has enrolled in the SLI certification program as part of our 3-year strategic plan to further develop the public library into a model for sustainability in Fairfield. The financial cost per membership is minimal, but there is great value in the program's resources and professional connections, such as mentorship by library directors who have completed the program. My own mentor is the current president of the New York Public Library Association and director of a public library in Green Lawn, New York. Certification through the SLI offers several significant benefits. 1, improved operational efficiency. Sustainable practices lead to reduced energy use, lower operational costs, and a smaller environmental footprint. 2, enhanced community reputation. Certified libraries are recognized as leaders in sustainability, inspiring other organizations and individuals to follow their example. 3, strengthened community engagement. By embedding sustainability into our mission, the library deepens its connection with residents, positioning itself as a proactive and forward-thinking institution. Public libraries are uniquely suited to address climate change by providing resources, information, and support that empowers individuals and communities to take action. Through participation in the Sustainable Libraries Certification Program, our library can expand its offerings to host workshops and events on energy conservation, waste reduction, and sustainable living practices, serve as a hub for distributing new technology, such as solar chargers or reusable goods, and create programs that educate residents on the effects of climate change and strategies for adaptation. These efforts would align with our library's core mission to provide equitable access to information and resources while contributing to Fairfield's broader sustainability goals. Pursuing certification through the Sustainable Libraries Initiative is an opportunity to strengthen our library's impact while addressing the challenges of a changing world. By investing in this program, we can enhance our ability to serve the community, reduce our environmental footprint, and lead by example in building a more sustainable Fairfield. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you. Any questions, council? All righty. Okay, thanks, Alex. Ammon Taylor, this is the solid waste recycling contract.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Grateful to be here with you and council. Not sure this will hold all my papers, but we'll try there. I've built a fancy presentation, got a PowerPoint. We can go through that if helpful. But that's really about what I want to say to you. And what's more important to me is to know what you want to hear. At a base level, I think you're all aware, WM values the relationship with the city. We have proposed a new contract for the city. So rather than jump straight into the PowerPoint and throw you everything that I want to say, maybe you guys can set the tone or the foundation for what you want to hear tonight. If the PowerPoint answers those questions, we'll still pull it up. But if not, take me where you want to go. I want to make sure I'm speaking to your needs tonight.
So council, I know we spoke about this at, I think it was the last meeting when we had our preliminary discussion with Ammon regarding the waste management contract. Basically, monthly rates, they've proposed monthly rates increase, and then also there would be an annual adjustment, 5% rate, and that's what was proposed by Waste Management. And there were some other concerns that I think that we shared, and concerns that John voiced after he reviewed the contract that I think was all relayed to Waste Management. I think ultimately we requested that there be $26 a month cost to citizens, 2% annual adjustment rate. And then regarding, there were some additional rates for contaminants, and there was some confusion about who was going to be covering those, whether it was going to be citizens, city, or in some cases it seemed like both citizens and the city were going to be covering those contaminant rates. So there were some questions there. I guess I would just be curious to hear what Waste Management feels, you know, what their response is to some of those requests and questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Happy to speak to all of those tonight. Any other
I think
questions or
one of the issues that I know from previous was, and it's interesting because I think I'm having that, it's not an issue, it's a good thing. We, you know, my husband and I don't have very much trash. And so to have a huge bin sort of doesn't make sense. I mean, it's very rare when we would have that full. And, you know, for a single person, just it sort of doesn't make sense at all. I have a smaller bin that I paid $120 or $130 for, and now I think that would be obsolete because I would be going to a bigger bin. And again, it doesn't kind of seem like, and I'm not sure if we're allowing for smaller bins or not. I guess that's unclear to me, right?
That was
No.
not an option.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was
We're
thinking.
going to 96-gallon bins, and there's no option
For
to
everyone.
opt out. Everybody would be going there.
Right.
There's no opt out, and then it's not itemized. I know you, Paul, requested, like, if there's an itemized list of what the costs are associated. There's nothing like that, or we didn't get anything like that from Waste Management. It's kind of just like, this is the rate, and this is what's included.
Yeah.
What's included is a 96-gallon bin,
Yes.
and there's no option
Correct.
to opt, there's no choice to opt out?
We could go to a smaller bin, 60-gallon bin. It doesn't really, 25 cents off per month for
25
residents?
cents?
It's minimal.
It's
Is
a
that
minimal
correct?
difference. That's correct.
25 or 23 cents.
So
Okay.
there are two options provided to the city for cart size. And please, if there's other questions here,
Yeah.
I think we've got enough on the table to start moving with. So there are two options that we put on the table. One is for every resident to have a 96-gallon cart. That's the same size you guys have for recycling. So you would have two carts at each home, one for trash, which would be collected weekly, and one for recycling, which would be collected every other week. The price that we have proposed for that service is $22.27 per home per month. I heard mentioned, I think 26 or 27.
it
Is
was-
that the council?
Yeah. Oh, maybe I was thinking about the annual inflation. But I felt like we went for a higher monthly cost and then a lower annual inflation rate, adjusted.
I can't speak for what the city charges to the residents. What WM is proposing to charge to the city is
Okay.
$22.27. Some cities tack on additional for city staff, for utility billing. That's up to you guys, right? Bill what you want to bill. Our proposal is $22.27 at that price point. That includes a cart for every home. So there is no cart rental fee. There's no cart replacement fee, unless they destroy it, run over it, or their teenager puts fireworks in it.
There is a cart fee though, right? I mean, you're paying
Not
for
under
it,
the-
right?
Not
contract.
itemized.
So it's not itemized, but you're paying for it, right? In other words, if you took the cart out, would it be less or be the same?
It'd be more.
It'd be more. Why would it be more?
Great question.
Thank you.
Yep. So right now, the service is provided using manual labor, right? The driver has to get out and service each home manually. And so when you think about the time that that takes to service a home, and our cost is time, right? The labor time. We can actually service the town faster using an automated collection system where every home has a cart. So it helps reduce the labor cost, which in turn allows us to propose a lower price to the city. That's the high level. I'm happy to break that down further if you'd like. But
What would be the cost if you did not have the 96-gallon container?
we have not prepared to offer that to the city. We're not planning to, because cost aside, it's also a safety and employment issue. Number one, workman comp claims with physical labor. But number two, providing consistent service to your residents. One of the questions asked in our group meeting in the past was, what's most important to you as it relates to a trash contract? And the answer I got back was that it's picked up on time when they say it's going to be picked up. And to do that, we need to be able to hire consistently and retain that labor. And it's way easier to hire somebody who gets to sit in a trash cab and service manually using a joystick than it is to ask somebody to get out in the winter, get out in the summer, do physical labor. Just like many public work departments across the nation are having difficulty hiring, so is the trash industry. It's not an easy thing to hire people into. We're trying to make that as competitive as we can by providing exceptional benefits, including free college tuition for all of our
So
employees.
what would happen is, by using the standardized bin, you'd have to have less of the workforce, right?
We still have one driver,
But you have
per
less,
truck.
one instead of two.
but he's more efficient.
So you have less of a workforce.
Well, we hope to grow our business across
Less of a
multiple
workforce
communities.
per pickup.
Faster pickup.
Less or the same? I'm just trying to understand
Fewer
what you're
people, more technology,
Fewer
though.
people, that's what I'm just
I think there would
understand.
be cameras on the trucks, right? And so you'd be able to identify contaminants. That was something that we talked about, too. So you'd have one person who wouldn't have to get out of the cab to
Right.
pick up. Everything's automated, and
There are no plans to lay off drivers moving the city to.
I'm not talking about
automated-
drivers, right? We're talking about the people who are with the driver.
Right.
That, you're not going to need that person. That's all I'm just trying to make
Right,
clear.
they're going from 2 people to 1.
Okay, I think I understand that.
So, yeah, with an automated service, the price point is lower that we're able to offer the city. And for safety and employment reasons, we're actually not even offering a continuation of the status quo with the manual labor. If the city really, really wanted that, we could go back and consider that, but it would be a higher price point than the automated service. There is no cost for the cart. It's built into the 2227. If it's damaged through regular wear and tear or the lid cracks, we come and replace that at no charge to the resident or to the city. It's included in the rate of 2227. There was a second option given for a smaller cart. It is not much different, $22.04 per home per month. That would give every home a 65-gallon trash cart instead of a 96-gallon trash cart. The contamination fee, I'm not sure exactly what language is causing the confusion that it could be charged to both the resident and the city. There's no intention to double bill each entity. Contamination occurs, it occurs once, and we charge for it once. That language is meant to incentivize proper recycling and discourage people from putting things in that shouldn't be recycled. We are more than happy to work with the city on an education campaign and to revise that language if interested. Maybe it's 3 strikes, you're out, and we remove your recycle cart, and there is no fee at all. Maybe it's a smaller fee, but if it happens 3 times, then it goes up.
How does that work again? How do you screen it?
So when the recycle cart is dumped into the truck,
Yeah.
there are cameras that will scan the material being dumped
Okay.
into the hopper. And using machine learning, it helps scan and call out, big white trash bag.
Gotcha.
That's not recyclable, right? And because the truck is GPS tracked, we know exactly what city parcel it's at.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And so we can identify who caused the contamination.
Okay. Thank you.
The other comments over here were about the annual adjustment. The annual adjustment currently is 3.5% in our current contract. WM is proposing a new annual adjustment of 5%, or we're open to the city choosing to use an industry-specific consumer price index. So when I say industry-specific, I think we're all familiar with what the CPI is, right? CPI is published by the federal government. It represents the price increases for consumers across a large basket of items, everything from cereal to meat to milk to trash service to automobiles to gasoline. Currently, as of the October numbers published about a week ago, the 12-point change for the CPI is 2.6. So I think the city attorney's comments where he asked for a 2.5, or Councilwoman's comments pointing to a 2, if we were looking at the CPI as a whole basket, they're in line. They're right on target. But when was the last time you bought your bread from WM, or your milk, or your gasoline? When we look at the specific part of the CPIU, which is all of those items, tied to the solid waste industry, it's called the CPIW-S&T, the Water, Sewer, and Trash Index. The numbers published for the 12 months preceding this November. And you guess what it came out at? It's exactly 5%. It's actually gone up from the previous 12 months, or from September to October. It was 4.6, has gone back up to 5. About a year ago, it was 5.8. So we feel like asking for a 5% is exactly in line with what the federal government has published for our industry-specific CPI.
What does the CPI capture? Like, what kind of factors does it look at?
All of the costs that go into those particular services of water, sewer, and trash collection. So part of it is tied to water and sewer services. Part of it is tied to trash services as well, which would be lubricants, tires, labor, fuel, maintenance, carts, anything that it takes to run a service of trash collection.
Because in the extraordinary adjustments under your service rates, you are allowed to, in addition to the annual adjustment, charge us for increase in the cost of transportation, including fuel, changes in the cost of labor, changes in the cost of equipment. It seems like that kind of captures some of those things that you're talking about right now. So it seems like you're able to, on top of the annual adjustment rate, then be charging us more for some of those things.
Good question. We hope never to use that language. In fact, in our current contract, similar language has been used only once with the city of Fairfield, and that was when we went through the extraordinary inflation we had 2.5 years ago. So where the current contract calls for a 3.5, and we were experiencing cost increases way above that, that language is there to help protect both the service we provide for making it financially sustainable, so that for the city, come around something like this, we hope in the future not to have to propose such large price increases, right? The closer we can stay to what our cost actually is, the better the city is at avoiding future sticker shock for the residents. That language is there for a similar approach now. Our plan is 5%. Very easy for the city to budget. You know exactly what it is. But should there be extraordinary circumstances outside and beyond our control, the language that is being referenced allows us to bring to council with documentation a request for an additional increase. And the same language actually infers that council needs to approve that for that to occur.
So going back to the sizes, just curious, is the truck programmed for one size of bin? So, I mean, for me, I'm not so concerned about the cost, whatever cost it's going to be. I don't care about saving a quarter every month. But let's just say I wanted that smaller bin and everyone else has the bigger one. Is the truck doesn't know how to distinguish between the two, so that's why it has to be uniform?
The truck can pick up either.
Oh, okay. Just
The reason
curious.
we're proposing either one or the other is, again, it's the most efficient way to keep the cost down for the city. Where we provide multiple carts across homes, there's a lot of additional logistical cost to that. You may have a home with a single resident who wants a small cart.
Yeah,
They sell their home and move out, a family of 6 moves in. They want 2 large carts.
yeah,
Now the cost of going to pick up a cart, deliver 2 carts, you may have an inverse situation.
yeah,
There's a lot of swapping of carts, and that takes time. That
Yeah.
takes labor, that takes money. That means a higher rate for the city. We can propose an option for the city of anybody can choose their cart size. It means a higher cost.
okay.
Our effort
Thanks
is...
for explaining
Yeah,
that.
no, you bet.
Appreciate
Good
it.
question. Our effort is to propose to the city the most streamlined and efficient service that we have seen successful across thousands of communities across America. And that is a standardized cart for trash, a standardized cart for recycling. Whether you choose the larger or smaller, we totally leave up to you.
So, Councilwoman, is the way you read it, is a contract such that there's a 5% cap each, or 5% automatic increase each year, and then there's these extraordinary costs they can add also? Is there a possibility that both those could come about?
Yes.
Is there any restriction, or as I understand it, you're saying this has to meet council approval, is that right?
No.
It does not?
I mean, I think it's, no, right?
Let's read through it together. So there would be a 5% annual adjustment.
Right, you're asking,
No
that's the
questions
proposal.
asked.
Yep.
The language she's referring to, and thank you for bringing it up, is on page 7, and I have extra copies if you'd like me to hand them out. Sorry, not page 7, page 8. It talks about extraordinary adjustments, things beyond our control, unreasonable or uncontrollable circumstances, changes in law, and it says in number 8 at the end. If company requests a rate adjustment pursuant to this section, so not just 8, but the whole extraordinary increase section, it shall prepare a rate adjustment request, setting forth its calculations of the increased cost / lost revenue and accompanying adjustment to the rates necessary to offset such increased cost / lost revenue. The city may request documentation and data reasonably necessary to evaluate such request by company, and may retain, at its own expense, an independent third party to audit and review such documentation and request. If such third party is retained, the city shall take reasonable steps consistent with applicable law to protect the confidential or proprietary nature of any data or information supplied by the company. The city shall approve all properly calculated rate adjustments within 90 days of the company's request, and the adjusted rates shall be deemed to take effect as of the date of the company's request. In addition, if the request is based upon any new or increased third-party fees, taxes, assessments, or charges, the city shall approve the rate adjustment within such time period as necessary to ensure that such fees, taxes, assessments, or charges are passed on to service recipients by the date the same are effective. So it does indicate the city is to approve it.
Right. What if the city doesn't?
We would continue the discussion. Our documentation is here. Look what's happened with either inflation or COVID.
You'd have to make your case.
We have to make a
Right.
case, right? And so, again, if you look at the long history we have with the city, it's been very positive. Our contract goes back before my time, before Doug's time. I'm not sure who knows exactly when we started servicing WM, but we're proud to be here. And we want this to be a mutually beneficial relationship that has consistency in the long term. And to do that, the program has to be financially sustainable. We're not here to sneak the hidden language in. We're right here talking about it. But it is there to protect us in serving you. Because the last thing we want is a contract that is underwater. We want to walk because we're losing money. And unfortunately, many, many contracts in the waste industry have experienced that over the last 2 years. This is newer language meant to protect against that scenario. I do not anticipate it being used unless we run into a situation like we did with inflation or COVID, in which case we would, per this language, be back here presenting to you.
So I guess back to my first question was, what was the response from Waste Management on some of our requests for changing some of the language of the contract?
I think we had two requests. One was you wanted us to propose keeping the current 3.5%. The other, there was a line item specifically that you wanted stricken.
And then I think that our city attorney also had some concerns that he expressed too.
So those were the ones I wanted clarification on, so we can make sure we're giving back to you all at once.
Okay.
Yes, no. I had read, thank you for sending that over, I think through Doug, kind of a memorandum of various concerns, but I didn't sense it as a specific, change this, change that. If they change this word, we'll give them a thumbs up. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for, is the direction on exactly what changes you want us to consider.
And one of my concerns was on page 8, where Liz was reading to you from the extraordinary adjustments, there's, I think, 7 other situations on that page where you can have an adjustment. And I guess my thought was it's kind of out of balance. And if you can get an adjustment for all those other things, besides having a rate guarantee that escalates each year for 5 years, I don't see much risk to Waste Management. Is anything else that pops up is adjustable, and almost all of that stuff comes down to something that's going to get passed through to the consumer eventually. But as far as the only other thing that it kind of bounces off of is paragraph 10, I think, in there later on, is your force majeure clause. And that's the clause that talks about strikes, shortages, natural disasters, acts of God, the things that you'd usually expect to maybe justify another adjustment because you didn't see it coming. But to me, it looked like page 8 pretty much assures that there's not any risk to you if any other circumstance, it looks like you could imagine it from a business standpoint on your side, would come up. You can come to the city and ask to adjust. So maybe I'm reading that a little bit too much into it, but the idea of telling us that it's in the contract, but you probably don't intend to use it.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of contracts where suddenly there's a reason to use it.
I appreciate the analysis and the perception. Again, our point is to have a positive relationship with the city where the service we provide can be sustained.
Yeah, and we've always had a good relationship
Absolutely.
with Waste Management, so don't misunderstand me.
So how about this? What if we changed that language, the bottom of page 8, instead of the city shall approve, we say pending city approval. It's not an impetus that you need to, it's an invitation to. None of these can be passed through, because that's our intent. Our intent is that we come to the city, we explain what's going on, we justify our case.
Right. Well, there would be an advantage to removal of the word shall.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that.
I can sense that.
completely,
Yeah.
I'm not the lawyer who wrote it. you can blame the lawyers, right? But again, our
Fair
intent is
comment.
to have it be balanced and fair. We're not here to push a one-sided contract. Our contract is all about delivering consistent, exceptional service, picking up the trash when we say it's going to be picked up.
Right.
And this helps us do that. So we're happy to revise that language if it brings the city that sense of comfort, if it removes that impetus that you shall approve it or have to approve it, and it's more of your commitment to engage with us in the process, and then pending your approval, the rate could be adjusted. Again, we're happy to do that, but I don't have a plan to use it. I don't want to be there.
Right.
I can't predict the future. We may have another COVID. We may have World War III. I am not in national office, and I'm not trying to negotiate the war in Ukraine. So,
Could you use the language, should the city approve it?
yeah, we can use whatever language you're comfortable with that balances the intent of, let's have a talk about it, because
Okay.
something's going on.
I think that would, to me, that would balance the intent of let's have a talk about it. So if the language was should the city approve it, which means we're not in a position where we are going to approve it, just
Understood.
because you present a case. Yeah.
I think
Those are my thoughts.
And
So-
January 20th it's going to end.
And
Promised.
please, are there other, so there's one request to make it 3.5. There's another request to strike the sentence, which was on page 8, about contamination, because you felt it was already referenced in another place. There's a request to change the language to should the city approve. Anything else? If those 3 requests are granted by WM, would we have your vote to move forward with the new contract?
I'd like a recommendation.
What's your position on the 5-year length of the contract versus, I know we had a time period earlier where we negotiated something about fuel surcharges when prices were through the roof and you guys had, a real apparent expense justification, and council worked with you for a year or two on a fuel surcharge with the understanding that we were going to review it each 12 months, and it did end after a couple of years. So are we in a situation where we could have a shorter contract for a couple of years and see if inflation goes away?
No. And here's why.
That's okay. I really don't think inflation's going to go away either. But
It may not. The issue of a fuel surcharge would be included in that page 8, which is subject to fuel skyrocketing,
Yeah.
using the language of should the city approve. We would come back and have that conversation. The reason we wouldn't entertain a shorter one is because of the equipment and capital that is expended to purchase carts to automate the city's service. That has to be depreciated over time.
Yeah,
The
we've
shorter
had
the
that.
term, we have to recover our cost in that shorter term. And
We've had
so-
that discussion with you before, and I think one of your earlier representatives, because
Yeah.
Waste Management with us
I will say.
quite a while, and leveraging to afford your big piece of equipment. I think we were told one time your trucks cost a couple $100,000. Now they're about $500,000 or $600,000. Is that,
Over 800,000.
they're over $800,000? Okay.
I will say the City of Agency recently renewed their contract with us, and they got a slightly better price than we have offered Fairfield, because they were willing to go with a 7-year term.
But you indicated that there were so many different factors that you guys take into consideration when you're offering a price to a community,
Absolutely.
right?
Whether it's automated, not automated,
Yeah.
how many homes, the economies of scale, how long is the term. There's all kinds of factors. If the city wanted to go to a longer contract, we would be happy to honor the price that we had proposed to agency. If you wanted to stay with the 5-year, I'll go back to my other question. If we approve those 3 things, would we have your vote for support?
I mean, I think based on what the Environmental Franchising Utilities Committee looked at, we would think that we would make that recommendation to council. Yeah,
Very likely.
based on, those changes.
Okay. I'm not sure how your agenda items work. Is that a votable item tonight?
We'll have to
I
put it
would
on for our next December.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I
we
would
put
say
it on
they-
December.
Yeah.
That way, everything's out and they can read it all together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then let me do this. Let me take back those 3 requests. Number 1, can we match the current contract 3.5? Number 2, can we change the language to should the city approve as opposed to the city shall? And number 3, strike that sentence on page 8 that we spoke. And I'll rewrite the contract pending approval to do those things, send it back to Doug, and thank you for that commitment that on December and reviewing that, we would have your support. We want to keep that relationship going.
Okay, great.
Didn't even have to get to the PowerPoint. You guys are so lucky. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to resolution, action items, and ordinances. The first action item is consideration of intent to award fire station project. Melanie's going to go over this for us.
So I won't read all of the bids, but we received bids It feels like forever ago, but it was November 14th. We received 10 bids, and we were really happy with the range. They were, I will say, well grouped, so we don't feel like that the low bid left anything out, or that not all of the contractors were bidding the same project. They were. Yes, there was a price range, but that, was...
I did notice they sent them all in within 2 minutes of each other.
Yes, yes. And I think there was some competitive pricing going on with either it was the unit price item or a particular piece of equipment that was happening at the last minute, because there were a lot of people in vehicles doing some last minute calculations.
I'm guessing the deadline was 2 p.m., November 14th?
Yes, yeah.
Just a
Right.
wild guess.
Yeah. So that's why you do bids on Thursdays, to allow people that time to do the last minute competitive talking. But anyway, so we were very happy with it. Klinger has checked some references and talked with Christner, assuming that they want to keep their bid. And so after all of that, we would like to recommend the award to Christner Contracting with a low base bid of $7,298,347.00, and then a unit cost price for the over excavation of $3 per cubic foot. On a lot of our other projects, like our road projects and things like that, we pay for the work that's done because there's so much unknown, like on a road project, and so we pay it on a per cubic foot or a lineal foot price. And so this unit price is if we run into something on that site that we're not expecting, that that was not within the footprint of the old DOT buildings, and that we need to excavate more than is expected. The contractor that did the demo did a very good job. We had tested the compaction, and so we're not expecting a lot of over excavation, but we do have that price there in case there is an unknown. The price was a little bit over the engineer's estimate, but I did provide you a copy of the overall project budget in front of you. And with carrying some contingency through the rest of the project, we do feel that for a project of this size, we are very close within budget, and we feel comfortable moving forward. I think we're within 3% of having overall funding, and so we think at this point we'll wait and see how construction continues. As I told Mayor before, I said if construction goes really good and we have no change orders, we'll be under budget, and if construction has more change orders, we'll need to obtain some funding in fiscal year 27. I think 26 will be at that point, so we'll continue to discuss it as we go on, but we're right there, so we would recommend award.
Okay, is there a motion to award Christner Contracting the contract?
I move to award Christner Contracting the contract to build out the fire station.
Okay, moved by Gandy,
Second.
second by Ham. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I would like to say thanks to all the contractors that took the time to bid. It was a large project, and we really appreciate all of them that took the time.
Absolutely. Okay, any other questions? If not, please call the roll.
Gandy?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Esti?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Okay, next action item, consideration of engineering services agreement with FrenchReneker for the Walton Golf Club cart bridge replacement. And Marcus is here.
Good evening, Council. The engineering agreement you have is for the replacement of the Walton Lake Golf Cart Bridge. This is for the final design and assisting with obtaining quotes for the project. We're going to be replacing the bridge with a dam and pipes system, and the agreement is for $14,900. And I'm here to answer any questions about the agreement or any questions about the project itself. just as a quick reminder, before we went through with the committee and went over 3 different options before landing on this design and option, so.
And council, just so you know, this is going to come out of general fund. So is there a motion to approve this $14,900 agreement?
Move to approve.
Moved by Gandy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Esti. Any other questions? Not, please call the roll.
Gandy?
Yes.
Esti?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Great, that was unanimously approved. Thank you. Next action item, consideration to accept wastewater step 3 bid package number 2 force main improvements project as final.
Yeah, so this is the force main that goes from Kelp Avenue or the Grease Lightning lift station just down from Waste Management up to the hospital. The work was completed almost a year ago, back in February and March. They did have a lot of seeding to do in the fall and then some cleanup this year or in the late fall, which is why this is just now getting to you. Acceptance of the work does start the 2-year warranty period. So if there is any further settlement or issues that would come up along that way, the contractor still does have a warranty period.
Is there a motion to approve as that project as final?
So moved.
Moved by Kness,
Second.
second by Ham. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Kness?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Esti?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was approved unanimously. Next action item, consideration to enter an engagement agreement with Ahlers Cooney's PC in connection with proposed annexation along Libertyville Road.
And this is something I'm not sure, I guess we've talked about for many years and off and on a lot with John Morrissey. With the Sunrise Trail development, it, I guess, proceeds or we need to continue with the annexation of the Libertyville sewer project and cleaning up annexations on our southern borders. Sounds so territorial, but so it does include, I will say, a lot of paperwork and agreements with different bodies, including Jefferson County, and we'll have the Mods and Barns involved, and we'll have Jefferson County Park, and so Ahlers and Cooney will help us with that,
Yeah,
given
so-
all the different parties involved.
Yeah, so they've got an hourly rate here that they've stated.
Yeah. Hopefully Doug will do the door knocking and smiling face. So,
Okay, so basically we're looking for, the action item is to approve this agreement with Ahlers and Cooney to proceed on annexation.
Question for Melanie. Is Ahlers going to help you pick the 20% that aren't going to be happy
John, I
about
wasn't
being
going to
called
bring that
voluntary?
up tonight. I wasn't going to bring that up tonight. No, we're actually going to start with, I'll say, redoing like the sewer agreements, and we're going to start with the ones that we know are yeses, and
You
we're
got
going
a
to
whole
see.
bunch signed up, right?
Yeah, we're gonna reformalize the, what's the name of the document that they called it? Had a specific name.
Oh. Intent to annex?
That's the
That wasn't
informal
it.
name, but
Yeah.
yes. So there is a document that the property owners sign agreeing to a voluntary annexation. It has a legal name. And we record all of those so that if the properties change hands, and then at that point we will see which ones we have left, and then we'll go from there to see if we
That'll be very
if we are
helpful.
over or under 20, we are very close to that 20% number of land area, and so we're going to just see where we're at.
Okay.
The school district also owns some property along Libertyville Road and the hospital, so we have about every public taxing body except for Indian Hills is included in this. So we'll have Ahlers involved.
Great, thank you. Motion, council?
I move that we enter into an engagement agreement with Ahlers Cooney in connection with the proposed annexation along Libertyville Rd.
Moved by Esty. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ham. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Esty,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Kness,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
The next is a resolution, consideration of authorizing advancement of costs for an urban renewal project and certification of expenses incurred by the city for reimbursement under Iowa Code, Section 403.19. Now, the layman's language here is, this has to do with the roundabout and collecting those funds through the TIF to pay ourselves back for what we paid for on that road.
On the construction cost.
On the construction costs.
Correct.
So that's really what we're doing.
And we have done this previously, but after 3 years it falls off, so we're renewing it.
So is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Gandy,
Second.
second by Esty. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Gandy.
Yes.
Esty,
Yes.
Kness.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was approved unanimously. Next resolution, consideration of determining the necessity of a proposed North Campus Ridge Urban Renewal Plan and ratifying actions taken with respect to the consultation meeting, notice of public hearing, and other matters related to the plan. So again, in layman's language, this is actually a continuation of what we did last week, where we split a vote into two. And technically, it should have been just one vote, apparently, for both those action items. And so now we're crossing the Ts and dotting the Is. So, per attorney's wishes. And in between, we also had, Doug has visited with the Vedic City and the supervisors. Everybody's all in agreement with this now. And so we want to move this forward.
So moved.
Moved by Gandy.
Second.
Second by Ham. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Gandy.
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Kness.
Yes.
Esty.
Yes.
Great, thank you. That resolution was approved unanimously. We will go on to the mayor's report. I just have a couple little things. The change grant was put in. There was a little hiccup at the very end, so we are waiting for, now we're in the waiting game from the EPA to see if we're going to be participating in this. And also, kind of a fun thing that I got to do, I went to 4 7th grade classes to talk about what the mayor does. They're all going to write essays about, if I were a mayor, I would. And it's a League of Cities contest for 7th graders. So they were a lot of fun. They had really good questions, and certainly invited them here to come see us in action. And it was a lot of fun. So I hope you guys get to do that sometime. And that's really all I have. So we'll move on to the city attorney report.
If I may make a request, Mayor, could we have perhaps either the executive director of Grow Fairfield or the executive director of Chamber come to the city and speak to us about the Main Street weekend or Main Street assessment that just took place? Perhaps give us a summary of highlights.
I think that will happen because there'll be a written report,
Okay.
and there's also something out online that people can listen to. Is that out there now?
It was recorded.
Yeah,
It was recorded and live, and it's up on YouTube on the Fairfield Media Center.
yeah.
Right, right.
But we will be getting, there'll be a written report that comes out too. But, so when that's ready, probably Mindy will do that. So we'll ask Mindy to do that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. City attorney report?
Yeah, I don't have a lot, but I did, since our last meeting, I attended the annual meeting of the Municipal Attorneys Association. Had a young man with me that I'm hoping to introduce to you maybe in December as a potential intern and maybe a candidate for a assistant position on the city attorney work going into the next year. And He attended the Thursday and Friday session. I attended all day Friday. Had my usual learning session at the lunch table, which seems to be where people talk about what's happening back home and how they handle it, and you take that home with you without even taking any notes. You just remember it. But I would say that there's probably across the board, everybody's in towns other than maybe the metros that were represented there. We're all still bothered by House File 718. There was a general discussion and different aspects about some of the things that the legislature doesn't seem to understand about back home on our turf, home rule issues that seem to be eroded, and there was some discussion about that. There was a good discussion on update on TIF, and the Dorsey Whitney firm was there and walked us through some examples. I had a chance to ask them a couple questions about our Sunrise Trail thing going forward, and they had a couple of ideas which I'll probably talk over with committee as we get into that over the next year or two. Anyway, other than generally thinking it was a good conference, I think I'll leave it at that. I did bring back materials to share with city administrator, and I forgot to bring them tonight. Doug, apologize to you, but anyway, it was a worthwhile session again. Something I've never missed, and something that I'll encourage in the future, whether I'm retired or permanently gone. It should be something that you make sure your city attorney shows up for, because it's a learning experience, both from excellent presentations. There's always a case law update, legislation update, something about public finance and other things, but it's also something that just for the general welfare of the council, as far as having a person that's current to advise you, I believe it's always a good investment. Other than that, I've had, I think, I wanted to mention one thing, and we've got this ongoing dog case. And our code enforcement officer filed a new set of charges under our dog numbers ordinance, which is different than what we had our convictions and our findings and our sentencing previously. And that one, the court about 2 weeks ago accepted an admission by the owners with the understanding that they are going to come back with an explanation of how they're going to relocate 30 of the 36 dogs that we know about. And we've got the Animal Rescue League in Des Moines involved, and we got the Iowa Humane Society, and we still haven't had a chance to have Weston be in the house to inspect, but it seems that there's some softening on the homeowner side now about letting Weston in if he's accompanied by people like the Rescue League experts. And so I think we're getting somewhere, but at this point, the other part of the equation is we have a ongoing dispute yet with something that the court already ordered this past year to be done, and that was to clean up the smelly, messy yard down there. And Weston has a estimate now to do that with a private contractor if the owners continue not to get it done. And it's a $5,000 or $6,000 expense versus the owners saying that they're pouring a form of chlorine antiseptic on the yard and the pea gravel that's layered down there, and that's going to take care of the smell. but it's still going to be a messy yard for, I believe, probably a decade or so, so we're not going to leave it at that.
A decade?
Yeah, we've had some input from city administrator and so forth about timeline on this, and we're up for another hearing on this, not until January. But at that point, there's supposed to be input from these other external agencies also, and our function and Weston's wish is that we get in the house, make sure about the animal health and safety, also make sure that promises that have been made, some of the promises have been made that by the time we have our next hearing, most of the animals will be arranged for placement at least, and that one of the 3 people that live at that residence and that has most of the animals is going to move outside of town. So that's been promised, and I guess we'll believe it when we see it. And our goal is not to drive people out of town with our animal ordinance, but this is one of those cases that nobody really, when you explain what we're dealing with, can understand how it isn't a nuisance when you have 36 animals. So we're getting there. I would expect that we'll probably have most of the animals spoken for or placed sometime during snow season, and I don't expect the court to allow the owners to take a whole nother summer to clean up the yard. I think at this point the yard right now should have been cleaned up last summer. Weston's contract inquiries have talked about a skid loader going in, taking off layers of the backyard, basically getting the contaminated, smelly stuff out of that center of the neighborhood over there, and then come back in with fill and an ordinary lawn. So that's as much as I can update you now, but we're within about a month and a half of that going forward with some involvement from professional agencies outside of our office and our code enforcement officer.
Great, thank you. Committee and board reports, environmental and franchise.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Environmental and Franchise Utilities Committee, we met on, let me get my notes. We met on the 18th. It was pretty well attended. We had 2 items on our agenda. The first was the waste management contract, which I think that we, already went over pretty well earlier. I'll just kind of point out too, in case it's not clear to everyone, there are not that many options for us here in Fairfield for our waste management needs. So although, I think that they're pretty well protected by their contract, we don't really have a lot of alternatives right now. However, I think that we've been looking into some, and I know Shelby Ford did a lot of research about what's out there, and then Faith Reeves was looking into, some other surrounding towns and what they're doing too. So it's possible that in the future, there might be another option, but just wanted to put that out there. Number 2, we talked about this grant, and Chris Sorflatten is here to speak to us additionally if there are some more questions. And he came to our council meeting last time to discuss this. So essentially, there are some grant monies that are available. I think it's between $500,000 and $5 million. The goal would be to start to use those funds to kind of work on our compost area and brush pile. So some of the things that we discussed was, and they're mentioned here in this attachment that Mr. Sorflatten put on the agenda. I guess I would kind of push back on whether or not an electric gate and required entry tag is a primary goal, but I do think that it's important to think about whether or not we can use those funds and then just kind of outsource the mulch and the brush pile. Along those lines, we have received one interested private party who would be willing to potentially take on our brush pile. There is a request from for the city to cover, and we didn't talk about this at the committee meeting, so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I will just say that there is one private contractor who's interested in running the brush pile, but there would be an upfront cost to the city. So this grant could potentially alleviate that cost. It does seem, though, since our meeting, that there are some additional requirements that for the grant and maybe some other details that need to be worked out. I know that Faith Reeves was there, and she was talking about working with Mr. Sorflatten about to get this grant together and get it written and get all of the details sorted out. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions for Chris. He's here. Our recommendation was to go ahead and have Mr. Sorflatten write the grant. I don't know, I guess, what in your attachment you say that there's a grant writing team creating an estimate for us. I would really want to know what that was. Yes, please. Because I think that our understanding, or at least my understanding, was that you would be writing this grant. There was no request for cost from the money from the city at this point. So that, I think our recommendation was kind of contingent, or at least for my part, contingent on that understanding.
Yeah, so I had this idea, and this is kind of what started the whole grant idea, was rather than renting the giant tub grinder once or twice a year at $250,000 or more plus inflation, why don't we get a wood charcoal kiln reactor so that we can put the big pieces in there and the small pieces and all the pieces and then fire it up, and then out comes wood charcoal, which is a kind of coming to the forefront of sustainability, and it shrinks the pile to 10% of its size. So it's a lot easier to deal with. You don't have to mulch it. It's the best soil fertilizer on the planet. Iowa has such great soil because we already have so much carbon in the soil. So now we have even more carbon we can put in the soil, and people can charge it with nitrogen or whatever they want, because you charge it up with nutrients or mycelium or whatever you want. And then the other thing you can do is just use it as mulch. You can use it, it's black, it's great. You can do other things with it too. And there's a company in Des Moines I've been talking to for a couple of years called ARTI, A-R-T-I, and they've been doing this for over a decade, and they're currently setting up the city of Des Moines with 2 kilns. So according to my understanding, they take a shipping container and turn it into a kiln so they can load it with a tractor, unload it with a tractor, and they treat the smoke so there's not really any smoke. And and they have their own grant writing team. So I have an appointment to talk with them tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And they said that they wouldn't need the whole $5 million. They would probably only need, I don't know, $2 million or something. And then with the gate, I was thinking probably cost $250,000 or at the most. And then here's another really fun update. So I thought I was going to be writing the grant all week, but anyway, yeah, I made a couple of calls and found out that our glass is getting shipped to Des Moines and to the Des Moines landfill, because the recycling plant, they're called International Paper. They don't have like a laser sorter to sort the glass, so they just landfill all the glass. So I was thinking, well, hey, what a great opportunity. We have a couple $1 million left over. Why don't we get them a sorter or a grinder so they can grind the glass and turn it into sand, or a sorter so they can, because it's crazy, there's like 10 different types of glass and they have to all be sorted. So in the past they've shipped it to Chicago where they do have a laser sorter, but that's super expensive, so why not? So, anyway, I figure that'd be something for committee to discuss, unless you guys have any ideas. And yeah, so that's the update.
So anyway, I think it could be a good opportunity for us. Chris is willing to write the grant, and if we get some money out of it, that's great. I think that there are some specifics that we need to sort out with what's required of the city, what you need from us, and who can provide those things to you. And so I guess we could talk about those additionally, and maybe Faith will be able to help you out with some of that stuff too, because she just worked on the grant. So.
Well, there's two options. Either give me the codes to the grants.gov and sam.gov and probably some other codes, or have somebody just print off the grant and then I can write it and then give it to Faith or whoever, and then they can submit it.
I think that is a sticking point. I think that maybe we won't be providing the codes to you. So.
I recently became friends with Ron Blair, and he did the whole bike trail, so I was kind of like drawing inspiration from that. Like he probably did a lot of that for free, so here I am. Following Ron's footsteps.
So you don't have what you need to know
I don't have
what's required in the grant, is that
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, but that's something you can get,
I can
correct?
probably print it out then.
We can print it out, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But we wanted to wait until we got, obviously, the full council approval and let everyone have the opportunity to ask questions. And I think that the goal is clear to deal with, obviously, it's limited to waste, and we are talking specifically about the brush and the mulch pile. I think that there are probably a lot of details that you're going to be having to sort out, but I think that if we can get some money to deal with it, that would obviously be great. So that was our recommendation to council, that we allow Mr. Surflatten to write this grant. And we were really pleased that you brought it to us. So yeah,
Thanks.
If it works out, that would be really benefit.
Okay, so do you want any action tonight?
Yeah, so I would make a motion that we allow Mr. Surflatten to write the grant, and then we provide him, printout of the grant, so he doesn't need to have access to our codes.
Okay, is there a second?
I would second.
Okay, second by Ham. Are any further questions? If not, please call the roll.
Esty?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Okay, great, that was approved unanimously, so she will get you the grant,
Okay.
okay? You're all done, that's it for you, right?
I'm all done.
Okay, Board of Adjustment minutes, anything you want to say about that, Melanie?
Unless the council wants the Board of Adjustment to reconsider the special exception the Board of Adjustment gave us for the fire station. The only other thing I wanted to point out.
What's that? Wait. What special exception?
Because the fire station, the backside of the fire station is adjacent to a residential zone. And it is also with the training tower on that side that is adjacent to the residential zone. It doesn't meet the rear yard setback next to the tower. It meets the rear yard setback everywhere else, and so they gave us permission to not meet the setback next to the tower. So unless you want to tell them to reconsider that, and then we do some redesign on the fire station. So I appreciate you not requesting they reconsider that. What I wanted to point out was the meeting schedule, even though it's not attached to the Board of Adjustment minutes, for Planning and Zoning and Board of Adjustment, we have a schedule that is available on the city's website, and it outlines the due dates for any applications to Planning and Zoning and Board of Adjustment. And the reason is there's very specific publication dates and mailing dates for both of those committees. And and as our paper has changed their publication dates and stuff like that, it drags out the amount of heads up that we need prior to a meeting. So people have to turn in their paperwork almost a month before they can meet with the Planning and Zoning and Board of Adjustment. And then we have certified mailings and everything like that. So when someone does have an issue that they want to come to the Board of Adjustment, we would encourage them to, or if they want a subdivision or something like that, although we try and help them out, like, and hurry the process as much as possible, we do set that schedule so that we can give people as much heads up as possible. So just, again, if you're working with someone or they want to file something with the Board of Adjustment, we do outline those ahead of time so that people know, like, this is the date we need to have it in if you want to meet with the Board of Adjustment on this date. So, and we'll get the new schedule up there shortly. So that was all I wanted to point out.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
With regard to the minutes, just to be clear, it noted that there's a Board of Adjustment meeting to be scheduled for, or going to be scheduled for December 16th, the same evening as the council's meeting.
Right.
And-
They meet at 5:15.
Thank you. And it had to do with a request for a conditional use for an upcoming purchase of property.
Right.
So this is not a property that has been purchased. It's
Yes.
okay.
So
I just want to
the-
make sure it's not something we've already talked about.
Correct.
Okay.
It is, we normally require, so the owner of the property is required to be the applicant, but in this case, the pending, the person who has the tentative offer is filling all the paperwork out, and the owner is going to be the actual signer on the application. So both the person who has put in the offer and the current owner of the property are being involved in this process.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
I know you're going to speak to this a little bit later in your report on your project update. This is not to do with.
No, it's nothing that you guys have seen. It's
Not to do with Lincoln School.
yeah, no.
Okay, that's
Nope.
what I know. Thank
No,
you.
another property.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, Council? Okay. City Administrator report, or you want to do your project update first, since you're there?
I'll do mine since I'm there.
Okay.
So on the project update, Park and Rec is keeping me very busy. So on the bottom of the first page, the Chautauqua bathrooms, we'll be seeing some construction, possibly even the first week of December. The contractor, we met with the contractor this week, and he is on schedule to pour the foundations for those bathrooms the first week of December. And then I just draw your attention to the bottom of the second page. There's been about 4 smaller projects that have been going on within Parks and Rec Department that I listed there at the bottom of the second page. Some stuff that's been finishing up, and then some stuff that's coming up. So again, lots of things happening in that department, which is good. The only other thing in the report that I want to draw your attention to is at the bottom of the 4th page regarding the Lincoln School. It's entitled on this as 401 West Stone. The planning department has had a lot of conversations with different property owners. I think most of the council members have received information. I have copied Mr. Gandy on several of the emails, being the ward representative. But I wanted to make sure all of you were getting the same information, particularly the first 2 items I think we talked about at the last council meeting as far as what recourse the neighborhood had. And so this is a very short version of everything that has happened in the last 2 weeks. And I'd be happy to discuss it with any of you further, not at 8:15 at night.
Oh, because I was going to ask you to summarize it here tonight.
Yeah, no, and I can, but
The reason I ask is I think there are people who will be watching this at some point, and they may not, even though you get access to this, if you go to the city's website, they may not do so. So if you don't mind
I will.
going over the point, thank you.
I was meaning more. I can talk about it in more detail
Yes.
than this at another time as well. So the first one was as far as the rezoning, the mixed use rezoning. That because that has gone through the process of planning and zoning and the public hearings and through official council action, the only recourse on that is through district court objection, and that's outlined in Iowa Code 414, subparagraph 15. And there is a specific limit as to how soon someone can object to that, and that is 30 days from when the third reading happened. So that people are coming up to that limit very quickly. And then as far as allowing the occupant to continue as a permitted use rather than requiring them to go to the Board of Adjustment as a permitted use, any person who feels that they've been damaged by that issue, they can file a request to object with the Board of Adjustment, and that would be with the same process as anyone who is objecting to their building permit. So we won't have them fill out the exact same form, but they would submit the paperwork, and then we would have the mailings and public notice and all of those kinds of things. And
There's a date, there's a deadline for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because we don't have a deadline really for somebody who is objecting to their permits, the attorneys we spoke to in Des Moines told us to follow the same procedures as we do for our permits. And since we don't have a deadline for our permits, the best guess we had was for the length of our permits, which is in 18 months. So like our building permits are good for 18 months. So that is why we have this 18-month window. So there's a year and a half that anyone can file an objection to the fact that they did not go to the Board of Adjustment. They may end up going to the Board of Adjustment voluntarily between now and then anyway if they decide to change their use.
Which for this particular event is May 29th, I say here, May 29th, 2027.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's 18 months from the first first large gathering that is scheduled for the Lincoln Center. The third item is that any public that is seeking a copy of the staff determination that determined that a conditional use is not required, or if they are looking for a copy of the zoning application made by the Huffman and the 7 other property owners, or any other of those applications, they need to file a public records request. There's no cost for electronic copies. Paper copies, there is a cost. Request for documents such as the mixed use zone ordinance, zoning maps, or comprehensive plan. There is no additional paperwork that is needed for those, but citizens can just reach out to the planning department to request copies of those. Again, there is a cost for paper copies, but electronic copies, there's no cost. And then we are aware of the new exterior lights. I don't know what day I spoke to the building owners. I mean, like Tuesday or Wednesday. I think I've had 2 or 3 conversations with the building owner last week regarding the lights. The last time the first conversation I had with her regarding the lights said that the shades or shrouds for the lights were ordered. They are not, the ones that she ordered were non-refundable, so she only ordered a few, so she could make sure that they worked with those specific lights and that they did their job. If the shrouds did not work, they understood that the lights would need to be changed out. And then I talked with her again and explained we went over what a foot candle was, and we discussed the mixed use code requirements for lighting in a little more detail. And the actual measuring device for foot candles, it's a handheld meter. Actually got a Black Friday deal on it today on Amazon. So the city did order one so that we can have a physical measurement of the lights. And then lastly, after the last council meeting, I spoke with a couple of the neighbors with their concerns. Personally, I'm not concerned about the traffic using the alleys and Carpenter, but I understand that the neighborhood has the concerns. So especially for this first year, we have offered to one of the neighbors, they're going to be in charge of it. We have offered cones free of charge for them to block off the areas that they feel are necessary. The one neighbor is going to kind of be in charge of them and making sure that they get put up and taken down each night. And then, so we're going to drop them off actually tomorrow, and then they'll have them available for each of those weekends. And no charge for that. So they're going to take over those areas. The owner of Lincoln Center is still intending to block off the Seal Coat Street. So these would be more for like the alleys, the Orchard Place condo areas, maybe some areas that are not directly adjacent to the building. So those are I would say, the biggest conversations I've had. I think I've probably had other ones, but those were the big ones.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Questions for
Yep.
Dolly? Okay.
Thanks.
I would like to get to the fun one though.
Oh.
Yes,
so
please.
you went to the 7th grade. You said you had 4 classes?
Yes.
Okay. So I think I had, what did I say? I had 7 classes. I was exhausted. I don't know about you, but I was exhausted after it. Attached to the council packet is a summary of a fun activity that I got to do. The middle school has what they call a leadership class. I'm not sure what they do on a daily basis, but during this time, what we did with the students, or what I did with the students, was went through a couple steps. So I told them is we had a general problem with pedestrian conflicts throughout the city. And so the first step that we did was ask them to identify things that drivers, passengers, and pedestrians do that are unsafe. So the tables that are listed there are the things that the kids in the classroom listed. And so again, there were 7 classes, different classes I went to. I want to mention that texting and talking on your phone while driving was the first one that every single class mentioned. So parents, your kids are watching. The other one that I found very interesting is 5 out of the 7 classes mentioned not stopping at stop signs. So, things passengers do are unsafe. All 7 classes mentioned distracting the driver. So, I know that several of the kids in these classes rode the buses. So, that was a very interesting part of the conversation. We'll just leave it at that. Things that pedestrians do that are unsafe. Only 2 classes mentioned this, but Mayor, I thought you would find this interesting, was dogs not being under control. I thought it was very interesting that the junior high kids even kind of felt that was an unsafe activity while walking. So, then the next thing that they did was, out of all these things that they listed, so we listed this up on the board, and then I told them, out of these, what activities do you see that are the worst right around the middle school? Like, think about when your parents bring you in the morning, or if you're a walker, what do you see? Which ones are the worst? And so then that's the next one. Drivers texting and talking on the phone, drivers not stopping, not obeying the school buses, going the wrong way, and not wearing seatbelts. Passengers distracting the driver and not wearing seatbelts. And then pedestrians not using the crosswalks, being distracted by a phone, crossing without looking both ways, and not wearing a helmet. And then the last part of the assignment, with 10 to 15 minutes left in class, we broke them into groups, smaller groups, and they took one, or some of them ended up doing several of these things and came up with solutions to one of them. So whether it was distracting the driver or texting and talking. The example I gave them is I did this activity with my kids, and I said, okay, so if I am texting, if I use my phone too much while I'm driving, what can you do to help me not do that? And my kids are a little younger, and their solution was to let them play on my phone so I'm not tempted to use it while driving. And I'm like, that is actually a very brilliant idea. So then the last couple of pages are the solutions that they came up with. There are some interesting, some fun ones, such as the students get detention for not using the crosswalks. People walking have tail lights. Spike strips if you go the wrong way at the middle school. But then there were some very useful ones, and I'll definitely talk with Joe Hurd on these. But what I pointed out to these kids and what the teachers made sure to tell the kids is, that I took 2 days of my time to come to them. They took a whole class period out. Their teachers were involved on this. This is something that, the council, we've had how many different people come and request to speak to you about. That this is something we've spent a lot of time on. And, sometimes having a different set of eyes look at something can provide a different solution. And that if it was worth my time to go talking with them, it was worth your time to hear their ideas. So I told them I would share this list with you, and it was really beneficial. And I will definitely be using some of these things, like if we ever request a stoplight at Fillmore and Maine, I think I will use this as like a letter of support for the DOT, because even 6th and 7th graders recognize that we have some issues, and it was really eye-opening. I think things such as putting like the speed feedback signals, we've got them coming up on Highway 1, maybe investigating putting those up near our school zones, or a lot of county roads have reflectors on their stop sign poles. Those are things that they have in other school zones and things like that these kids are coming up with these ideas, whether they've seen them elsewhere or they're just coming up with these ideas. It was really great to see. Another one was even just developing more reflective Trojan gear, so that kids who walk have reflective gear on. So again, it was exhausting. I was absolutely exhausted after the 2 days. But it was a really great opportunity. So I appreciate the mayor asking me to go, and I hope you guys enjoy their list. I think you can see it right there, like middle of the screen. The DEAD awareness program. Don't eat and drive.
I love the picture that went with that one too.
Picture, yeah.
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
I like the design a car that decreases speed and eventually stops if it doesn't detect a heartbeat on the wheel.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So person, go talk to Elon.
Yeah, I will admit, I actually sent that one into the Institute for Transportation Research at Iowa State University, because I was like, this is too amazing and I'm not smart enough to do anything with. And I got an email back from one of their researchers. We were supposed to have a phone call a couple weeks ago, but we haven't been able to reconnect. So we'll see what happens with that. So anyway.
But I also think you made a really good point, and that is, kids, your parents, you're being watched.
Yes.
So be a good example.
Yes. Yep.
So
Yep.
great.
Thanks.
Glad you had fun with that. Okay, Doug, you're on tap.
Well, last council meeting, we had a property owner of 1104 East Burlington, pardon me, that he came to address the council rather than coming to address me, which probably would have saved a whole bunch of miscommunications and who's doing what, when, where, and why. And basically what had happened was the city went in to replace his water stop box and then billed him for $936, I believe. It's in here somewhere. And understandably, he was upset. He came with, I was never notified, so I did a quick look at his file and letters were sent out. Now, where I got confused, and the council had asked me to go and talk with the property owner in depth, and I actually talked with staff. So I talked to the water department, I talked to the building clerks, I reviewed the file, made photocopies of the file, and this is actually what I discovered throughout this whole investigation. Is the previous property owner knew that the stop box was not working. Then this property owner bought the property and they were notified. So there were actually 3 letters, not 6, that I had interpreted. The other dates that I had mentioned were actually work orders that city staff had gone out, but the property owners, both of them, knew that the stop box needed to be repaired. So that is within our policy. And if they don't repair it within 30 days, the city has the right to go in and fix them. So what had ended up happening throughout all of this, the property owner did tell me that I got one of those letters. I brought it to City Hall and they told me that, don't worry about it. I can't verify that because nobody here worked here when that had actually happened. And it really surprises me that anybody from the city would send you a letter that says fix your stuff or we're going to fix it for you, and then brings in the letter, tell me about this, and they say, never mind. We don't, that's odd. So something happened. So nobody really knows what really happened. However, it is the responsibility of the property owner to maintain, either fix it or the city will fix it, so that when we shut water off, it can be shut off, and that's your responsibility on your property. That's within our policy, and we make that very clear. So after talking to the water department employees, he said, the property owner said, but it's on, it works. After talking to the staff, they said, well, we shoved the rod in the ground and put enough pressure that we got it open to where it can work a little bit. So there's a lot of this property is not used all the time. It's just for guests or what have you. So all of that being said, over the period of years, property owners knew about the situation. But it wasn't used enough to where they didn't really think about it from day to day. We kept checking it. Our staff gathered a bunch of these work orders and said, go fix them when you've got time. And they just went out and they fixed them. Gave the property owner this bill. And then the property owner is perplexed of why all of a sudden, and getting to know, figuring out what we did versus what they didn't do. And the way I feel about our procedures is, even though this is a big drawn out years of fix your stuff, that I feel like before that the city goes out to actually repair it, and they are going to repair it within this amount of time, that another letter has been sent out. It actually says in the report that we actually tried to reach out by phone, couldn't get, we left voicemails, couldn't get whatever it may be. We do our best that we can, and then we've got to fix things when we've got time. So the repair, I still feel, is on the property owner. Council may disagree with that, and that's okay. But honestly, having an $836 bill in I would want to have some time to figure out what's happening. And then we charged them a late fee because they didn't pay it. So there was 7% that was tacked onto that. And I will not waive fees. And that's at your discretion. That keeps that ethical boundary there, that I'm not waiving fees for people, whether I may know them or not. That's up to the governing body. And that would be the only recommendation, but whatever recommendation you may choose is your decision.
So, council, the bill was $875.05, and then because it was not paid in timely manner, there was a 7% late fee added on that made the bill a total of $939.98. So the question is, do you want to waive that late fee and suggest that the client pay the $875.05, or do you want to include the late fee and the bill then would be $939.98?
I'd make a motion to waive the late fee. You know,
Okay.
once he identified it and came to council and spoke with us and everything. And
Okay, so there's a motion to waive that late fee by Esty. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ham. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Esti?
yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Gandy?
Yes.
Rowe?
Yes.
Kness?
Yes.
Great, thank you. That was approved to waive that late fee of 7%. Thank you. Anything else? Doug,
That's all I've got. I mean, if I sit
Okay.
for questions.
any questions for Doug? Not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Kness, second by Ham. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, council.